All right, we're gonna get going in 1 minute. Give me 1 minute, everyone. I'm eating a really dope gnocchi and some gnocchi and meat and spinach. Hold on, 1 minute. All right, bum 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 bum. Here we go. Hi everyone, I'm Kev Berry. I have no clue how many people are watching. I know my roommate is watching in the living room, so thank you, Anna, for maybe being my one audience member. Um, Full disclosure, I am eating my pasta for dinner, and I am performing this show tonight in my pajamas because it is cold and there is it's very windy here. It's very windy here in Washington Heights. There's a lot of welcome. Welcome to Fast and Furious. My name is Kev Berry. I am a Tank Associate Artist, and I am the host of Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious has been happening since 2016. It is an evening of rapid responses to current events, so all of the artists in the evening of work that you're about to see created the work that you're about to see in the 7 days leading up to tonight. So the work is in response to the headlines of the week. So the work is very messy, very fast, made very furiously, made very angrily. And there's a lot to be angry at in the world. There's a little less to be angry at than there was before the first Tuesday of last month. Right now. But there is still a lot to be angry with. So normally we would be doing this at the Tank in Midtown, the beautiful two-theater complex on 36th Street and 8th Avenue. But we cannot right now because of the way of the world. And until there's a vaccine, we will be convening here in this online space that we've created over the last 9 months. And the Tank right now is doing their year-end fundraising campaign. They're trying to raise, I think, $25,000. So you should go to fillthetank.org if you can and drop some money in the Tank's bucket there. And then if you have any money left over, in the bottom whatever this is on your screen, there are the artists who are participating in tonight's show. It's their Venmos, so you should shoot them some extra money if you have any left over after you've donated it to the Tank. So we're just gonna get going, and we're gonna start things off with David Lawson with Tales from Phone Banking Georgia Voters.
I've been phone banking a lot in 2020, first for the presidential election, and now for the two United States Senate elections in Georgia. Phone banking for Raphael Warnock and my fellow millennial Jewish man, John Ossoff. The Washington Post ran this pretty good article, though, saying that if you do not live in Georgia, that you should not be phone banking that state. This article even said, imagine if your phone was ringing every night with someone calling from Brooklyn trying to convince you what's best for you in Georgia. this gave me a little bit of pause. Like, yeah, I live in Queens, not Brooklyn, but I was like, maybe this is bad for lefty candidates to be a guy in New York City calling about a Georgia election. But obviously, this election is going to determine which party holds the majority in the United States Senate. This is a huge election for all of us as Americans. I couldn't just sit on the sidelines. I had to get in there. Not to mention, when I call anyone in any state, be it Florida or Texas or Michigan during the presidential election or Georgia, now I am not trying to make it like, if you say to me that you voted for Trump twice, I'm not going to try to make you believe in the Green New Deal. That's not happening. I call you, and if you are leaning Democrat but you don't have a plan to vote, then I help you make a plan to vote, so that's one more vote for that candidate. That's what I'm doing, not telling you what's best for Georgia. Yet, on the first afternoon that I set aside to phone bank for those two Georgia campaigns, I could not find an organization calling Georgia that used ThruTalk. ThruTalk being the phone banking software that masks your phone number. All these organizations wanted me to just make calls with my actual phone number. Now, thinking back to this Washington Post article, yeah, if my New York City area code pops up on your screen in Decatur, Georgia, that's not a good place to start the conversation. That article has a good point about that. Not to mention that I have phone banked before using my actual phone number, and it's usually resulted in days after I'm phone banking, I'm getting angry phone calls from people who are like, why were you bothering me? Luckily, though, I did find an organization that did have ThruTalk, turnout2020.org, if you want to join us and make calls to Georgia. And I made these calls to Georgia. Now, in Georgia, every now and then people would end the phone call with this very lovely four-word phrase, have a blessed day. That is not a phrase that going to synagogue every Saturday morning I heard a lot. Yet, there is this man right outside my apartment that even when it's crappy weather outside, he's always sitting there outside. And every morning when I walk out, he says to me, have a blessed day. And I look back at him and I emphatically say, have a blessed day. So when someone in Georgia would end the conversation with have a blessed day, rather than sounding like a crappy New York City Jew out-of-stater, I, thanks to my neighbor who says this to me, have a lot of experience emphatically saying, have a blessed day. Now, this election, yes, is going to impact my life as a New Yorker so much. This election could lead to those doomsday cuts for the MTA not happening, to arts organizations that I depend on for my income and my quality of life, like the tank, being bailed out. They could mean a more science-based approach to COVID-19. That's really why I'm making those calls. And it's not even a negative thing. It's not like some Washington Post article saying that you're hurting these lefty candidates. It's not that. And it's not even about my familiarity with a phrase like have a blessed day. But there is a phrase that I think of very frequently as I'm making these calls for these two Senate campaigns in Georgia. It's a phrase that I heard all the time during the Occupy Wall Street movement. It's a phrase that really matters to this election. And that phrase is, all our grievances are connected. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, David. That was great. All right, we're just going to keep pushing forward here. And now we have Zombie Mink by Amanda Miller, Rachel Evans, and Melissa Shaw.
Reporting from Denmark, this is Agnes Andreasen. The saga continues in Mink Gate 2020. It seems the Minks have now risen from their mass graves. A rushed cull of Denmark's mink over concerns about a coronavirus mutation has left the country facing a new horror as cadavers of the animals re-emerge from the earth. The macabre phenomenon was observed in a military training field outside the western town of Holstebro, where thousands of mink have been put into an improvised mass grave. The carcasses rose to the surface, lifted by pressure from gases released by the decomposition, according to local police. They were only buried 3 feet deep, whereas the Environment Ministry said mink should be covered by at least 5 feet of soil. That's 2 feet difference. The ministry insisted the mink's escape from their tomb was a temporary problem tied to the animals' decaying process, and will be monitoring them 24 hours a day until a fence is put up. For those of you just tuning in to Mink Gate 2020, in early November, here in Denmark, which is the world's largest exporter of mink fur, we announced it would cull all of the country's more than 15 million mink after a mutated version of the novel coronavirus was discovered and believed to jeopardize the effectiveness of future vaccines. 2 weeks after having issued the decree, while in the middle of a political crisis over the legality of the decision, the government concluded last week that the potential threat to human vaccines was very likely extinguished in the absence of any new cases of the mutated version. And they would be monitoring the situation 24 hours a day until a I'm Andreas Agnesinatus.
Oh, I loved that. Thank you, Amanda. That was great. We're just gonna keep going forward here. Next up, we have "Okay Fine" by Eli Schleicher.
I want to imagine a place with rolling hills, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be picturing because I've only ever seen photographs or drawings of that kind of a place, which is fine, but makes me wonder what it's actually like to be there. I don't think you can answer that question for me. I shouldn't have come. It was stupid, I think. But now I'm here, and I'm imagining what it would have been like to have stayed somewhere else. And I know what that feels like. I think it would have been better. I think. Sorry. Do you know what time it is? Okay. Fine. Sorry. I think I make decisions based on how I want to feel in the future. I think that's a bad thing.
All right. Thank you, Eli. That was great. Eli made that on very short notice. I forgot to email him to tell him he could do the show this week until yesterday morning. If you like what you see so far, you can go to fillthetank.org and drop some money in the tank's fundraising campaign for the year end. As you know, the arts have been decimated by the coronavirus and by the lack of support from the federal government. So the tank needs some support right now. So they're trying to raise $25,000. Head over there and drop them some bucks. Great, we're just going to keep going with a Fast and Furious stalwart who has been with Fast and Furious as long as I have. Celeste Khan with Not Gonna Talk About It.
You know what I'm not going to talk about? Not going to talk about that stupid-haired, ugly-faced asshole. No. Did you know that Freemasons membership has been on the decline for some time now? Apparently, they are looking for solutions. One of these potential solutions is to be less racist and sexist, but then they worry that they would lose too much of their membership, so kind of like the United States in that way, and that guy who was an asshole who, like, could you just leave already? Who I am not going to talk about. We all know that COVID is on the rise, which is fucking frustrating and horrible, and I'm also not going to talk about that, or how completely incompetent and selfish the man in that White House is. No, I'm not going to do it. Apparently, there are massive numbers of poop toys on the market, like Gotta Go Flamingo and Poopsie Slime Surprise, which even I hate saying that name. I think it's the S in the Poopsie. And I love talking about poop. To be clear, I love talking about poop. I talk about it all the time, but you know what I don't talk about all the time? That fucking steaming pile of shit who is just lazing his days away being sexist as hell, and even in his lame duck period, how he just manages to just be awful things, and I'm still worried about how he's going to affect the future, and I know that these things were all problems before, but many of them at least, but like, no. I will not talk about it. Wow. Did you know that a woman kicked off a football game on Saturday at Vanderbilt? Sarah Fuller is her name. I don't know anything about Vanderbilt or how good they are at football or anything like that. I do know that I don't think that we should really be playing football right now because it's kind of fucking absurd that we have football games happening right now in a pandemic, and like, why do we prioritize that? But you know, I guess that's just what we prioritize. We just prioritize football, and we prioritize this like version of the economy that is not actually about the workers, because, you know, I mean, you can't have an economy if like you have a bunch of people dying, but like, we don't think about that. No, like, there are maybe solutions, you know, to like dealing with the economy and people dying, and like giving people safety nets, and, you know, helping people stay home by giving them the ability to stay home, by making sure that they can still pay for things, and making sure that like people have access to things, and socialism, but God forbid that we, you know, actually think about stuff like that, or, you know, and I'm not gonna talk about the turtle bastard either. No! I'm not giving them airtime. So go somewhere else if you want to hear about that. Seriously, fuck Johnny from season 3 of Love Island! God, he's such a dick.
Wow. Thank you, Celeste. Fun fact about Vanderbilt: when we were applying for high schools in college, we were applying for colleges in high school. This kid that I sat with at lunch my junior year, Tom Reynolds, told our lunch table that Vanderbilt only accepts really, really beautiful looking people, so you have to send in a headshot. And they have to think you're appropriately beautiful in addition to smart enough to get into Vanderbilt, which I don't know if that's true, but it's how I think about Vanderbilt when I think about Vanderbilt. So that's good. Thank you, Celeste. I love that. I would join a cult that you were leading. Next up, we have another Fast and Furious stalwart, Dennis Chom, with I Guess I'll Die Another Day.
So I was thinking the other day, I do that sometimes. Most of us know men who refuse to wear a condom and claim they're clean, and then you get chlamydia or HPV or whatever like 2 weeks later. So I used to think that that was a man thing, but now I'm realizing that that type of thinking is prevalent. Literally, there are people out there during this plague trying to convince 1,000 other people to join their pod and throw weddings and, I don't know, lick subway seats because they felt lonely during quarantine and wanted to feel alive by murdering other people. They are the, no, I'm clean people of the pandemic. In all seriousness, though, whenever I watch an apocalyptic movie, I wonder at what point in the story I'd be dead. Like, Thanos shows up in New York City, and one of his giant wheel-like spaceships lands on 6th Avenue. Where would I be? Up until this pandemic, I would have said right underneath that wheel. I used to think I would be one of the first casualties during an intergalactic war, like 100%. I'd be sipping my third mimosa at my bottomless brunch, and bam, I would be squished underneath that giant wheel. But you know what I've realized? I am wrong, like super wrong. I'm one of the few people who experienced the first wave of COVID in the US, the worst place to be in the world, and I'm now experiencing the second wave in Turkey, the third worst place to be in the world after the US and India. And I can say, if the apocalypse was here, I know who would be the first ones to die. Not gonna name names, but you know who. You know who you are. And I can also safely say, I am not one. I imagine at the very end of this apocalyptic situation, I'd be with the anxious strangers I've befriended along the way. I learned this year that anxiety saves lives. Sometimes. It's good. Anxious strangers are good. We'd realize that maybe this apocalypse is not really the end, but just a very, very bad catastrophe. So some of us will actually make it. And then right there, I would take a sigh of relief. And then a brick would fall on my head. And I would die. Or if I was truly an Avenger, I would kill Thanos, and then his dead body would fall on me and crush me to death. But also Captain America would shed a few tears for me, which is like hot. I'm not getting any action these days. But you know, this year has been the opposite of hot. I started the year with a big loss. I lost my grandpa on New Year's Eve to what we now think was COVID. And that just made me start a journey to get to know myself. And I learned a lot. I found out I suck sometimes, and I'm fine with that now because a lot of people suck and I can't change them. But I also got so much better at keeping people at a distance if they suck a lot and I can't change them. So here's a list of people with whom I've set clearer boundaries. Number 1, Megyn Kelly. Megyn, honestly, I don't even know what to say except for the fact that I'm ashamed I thought you'd be like a Chris Wallace type of figure. But you know what? Thanks to therapy, I can say NBC should be ashamed. Should be more ashamed because they paid you millions of dollars and your Twitter is straight up dumpster fire. Number 2, Ted Cruz. Ted, I try to follow you on Twitter because I'm a journalist and both sides of the story, whatever, but the Harvard certified trolling just never stopped. So recently, I unfollowed you on Twitter. All of your accounts. I feel much lighter. Feels so good. Number 3, the white guy who took me out on a date at a really fancy and yummy restaurant in August. Thank you for the lovely cocktails and the pasta and the amazing ceviche. But I will never get over the fact that you think black people don't have the right to complain about slavery because we were all slaves at one point in history. Maybe I had a slave ancestor in the Byzantine Empire, and maybe your Irish-Italian ancestors had some Roman Empire drama like 50,000 years ago, but you must know that's not the same thing. And also, a tiny, tiny, tiny lesson here. Take their money and walk away. Number 4, the guy I was dating right before quarantine who described our relationship as a wedding gift to his brother, which sounds cute, but it's not. So this guy was Jewish and he had a Jewish brother who was marrying a Christian woman, which made their Jewish dad upset. So this guy decided to tell the dad that he was dating a Muslim woman, me, so that the dad would be more upset about our relationship than the wedding. You are blocked on my phone. It took me months, but now you're blocked. And you know, Once I started blocking, I was like blocking like crazy. I used to be against blocking, and now I'm blocking left and right. So, number 5, another block. My dear college boyfriend who refused to settle down but moved in with a woman he'd never met in person at the beginning of the quarantine. I'm glad you're very happy, but I may have cursed you once or twice or more, and the 5th time you decide to tell me you've never moved on, I won't be there to listen to you because that's not how technology works. You're blocked, you're blocked. Number 6 is a group of people, a few of my close friends who always demanded more and disappeared when I needed them the most. You won't find me here when you're back. And number 7 is finally myself. I found out during quarantine that it is so easy to be hard on myself. But I'm the best I have, so I'm trying to be kinder to myself. I know it may seem like with Trump gone, we won't have many things to be fast and furious about, but my struggles as an immigrant will not change. So I'll still be fast and furious every day. But the fight is a marathon, not a sprint, so it's good to take it one step at a time. Love from Istanbul. Mwah.
Yay! Oh man, that made me emotional. Thank you, Dennis. Great, we have 3 more left. One of them is me. I'm not gonna go yet, but we're gonna keep going with. I have something I have to say. Oh yeah. If you like what you're seeing after you've donated to the tank at fillthetank.org, Venmo the artists who are performing tonight some money. Great. Next up is Emily Gomez with "And Now Some Good News." Yes, thank you, Emma. Thank you, I loved that. Emma, that was great. I also cry when I think about the vaccine sometimes. All right, next up is me. Whew, okay, next up is me. This is called Feel So Deeply. This is the Orange Terror Cycle, Epilogue 1. I didn't expect to be emotional when I sat down to write this thing. I know I am an extremely emotional person, a college professor, and I was crying with her over some inconsequential thing. A college professor who is one of my closest mentors. When I was crying with her, she said, "Oh, Kev, you feel so deeply." So whenever I get emotional, when I least expect it, I hear her saying that in my head. "Oh, Kev, you feel so deeply." And I don't normally say my name in this project. I've kept it, pretty anonymous over these last 44 chapters, 45 chapters. In my scripts here, I designate myself simply as man. And every man the audience has met in various generic locations: middle of the road, a field; in the middle of the night, a theater. I can't remember if I've acknowledged that, though, that this project is, autobiographical, which is to say that it's about me. Which is to say, oh, Kev, you feel so deeply. And I didn't expect to get emotional when I sat down to write this morning, but here I am. Nevertheless, my eyes were tearing up. Eyes teared up when I wrote it, when I typed out Epilogue 1. Because, yes, this project is ending. I am bringing this cycle to a close, and the despair of the last 4 years has been so awful and so full of awe that I think it demands 2 epilogues, and this is the first of 2 brief epilogues, which is maybe indulgent, but, it's also the culmination of an already indulgent project, so indulge me for just a bit more. I've talked about what we were doing 4 years ago and how we've spent the interim, but I didn't talk about where we were or how we were doing. 4 years ago this month, we were scared shitless. We didn't know what to do, which is why we began making this show every month, began doing this show every month, began making this monthly salon. It was horrible. We started meeting because of the shooting in Orlando, but we had to keep meeting once our democracy was compromised by a businessman who had no business assuming the highest office in the land. I don't want to rehash the last 4 years point by point, but I do want to rehash how far we've come and how far we still have to go. The last 4 years have shown us the worst of humanity and the best of it. The last 4 years have shown us the sinkhole opened beneath our nation's feet and allowed the sun to shine down, 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 and exposed how fucked we've let ourselves become. And the last 4 years have seen the heroes among us work one grain of meaningful sand at a time to fill the pit with activism and hope and work. And the last 9 months, which have arguably been the worst of my life, while also somehow being the best, have seen those around us who needed help learning how to ask for it when we're down. And those of us able to help quickly jumping into action by reaching down a hand. A few weeks ago, when they announced that the president-elect was the president-elect, I was in my room in the middle of an anxiety attack, in the middle of a panic episode. I had just gotten out of the shower after a long bike ride before heading down to the theater for load-in for my show. And I saw the notification, the CNN notification on my phone, and my sponsor, my AA sponsor, he had told me not to get ahead of myself until it was real. Real meaning he'd won. He told me to stop worrying and assuming the worst because, it wasn't going to happen. The worst wasn't going to happen, so stop worrying about it. But I did. And he said, don't think about it, don't mourn or celebrate it until the news makes it real. And I got out of the shower and I saw that the news had made it real. And the relief that flooded my veins put a stop to my anxiety attack, and I began to cry. And I hinged over at the waist, and I hung there for a second like I was in acting class, and I rolled up one vertebra at a time, and I realized I could bring this cycle we've been making together for 4 years to a joyous and hopeful close. I didn't expect to get emotional when I was writing this thing out. And as I typed it out, threw it together this afternoon after getting back from Trader Joe's, it hit me. I said I was going to do the cycle until the current president was no longer the president, and I did. I did it. I did it, guys. And I have. And I will. I didn't break a promise. I saw a commitment through. I saw it through. And with one more month to go, one more installment to go, it feels so good to be able to feel again. Or at least begin to recover and begin feeling begin to feel the beginning of what it feels like to feel. I got emotional writing this thing out, because as much as I want to keep doing this project, the feelings I'm feeling again mean that it's time for this to end. So until next month, until we meet one final time, good night. All right. Thanks, guys. And last but not least, we have Lewis Elliott with It's Over, Rudy.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Mr. Council Member. Thank you everybody for having me at this meeting today over Zoom. My name is Gladys Kuberfeld. I live at 44 Quackaround Trail. And I'm just going to cut right to it. I don't care what bathroom my son uses. It's hard enough to get him to take a shit if he takes one in the women's restroom. I don't care. Also, why do we still call it the women's restroom one without the urinals? Who still uses those anymore anyways? This is for Miss Sharon Berger Katz. She's my son's teacher. My Patrick. My sweet Patty. He's so sweet and loving. God, he is such a big gay. Every night, he walks into the kitchen to take out a frozen sausage link and takes it back to his room to play with after I've gone to bed. I remember when I was a horny second grader. Those were the days before the war. The war on men. Oh yeah, I was having sex left and right, but then I had to say bye-bye to chicken in my thighs. Anyways, Miss Sharon Berger Katz. I knew that there would be holiday movies all over Zoom during the ending days of the semester. I would have done the same thing. I would have tried. But I would have played the classics. The Family Stone. Wallace, Cher, and Moonstruck. I was appalled, council member. Appalled that she would show this stuff to my kid, all the kids. The horror. I know that there is a whole song dedicated to this movie story, and sure, it's pretty catchy. But the claymation of the old-timey movie Rudolph and the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Rudolph and the Red-Nosed Reindeer is an abomination. I mean, it's out of hand, counselor. Is this what we're going to do to our kids today? Rudy, with his gay nose, who just wants to be loved. Father, unaccepting. His father horrified of his son and turns his son away. How is this going to be learned by the children? I get a red nose every time I do coke, and on the third week of each month, when Mr. Cook me to lick his back door. Does this mean that I'm not worthy of love? Not in this household. I'm a mother and a wife. I do whatever it takes. And as if this wasn't enough, little dental gay elf. He just wants to be a dentist. And what, would we think this is silly? Miss Sharon Berger Katz and I went to high school together, and she wanted to be a Rockette. That was silly. She has scoliosis. It was never going to happen, Sharon. My son will probably not have a red nose, but he probably will have a red hole, and I will still love him. Like I love my priest, Anderson Cooper, and the Oscar Mayer Waney truck as it drives by. I don't honk because I have to. I honk because I care. This movie cannot be played to the kids. These poor kids. Some of these little children, their parents have put braces on them, on their baby teeth. They'll never recover. My son will never be a drag queen or a server at Macaroni Grill if he watches this kind of thing. He'll never grow to be the one who rides the sleigh. Rudolph barely made it out alive with his father, Donna. Like my father, a hard ass with no ass. I won't tell Miss Scherenberger how to teach, but I will tell her what not to teach. Which is these movies of sick values. We have to raise the children to be better than us. We have to raise the children to be Cher. That's all I have today.
Wow. Thank you, Lewis. All right, everyone. That's the show. Thanks for coming to Fast and Furious 45. Next month's show is going to be on Tuesday, January 5th, and that is going to be my final show as host and producer. I'll still be around, but now that Trump is going to be moving out of office, we're working on some changes to the show. That feel like they have to happen. And part of that is me moving on, and I am very sad to be moving on, but it's what it is, and that's it's great. But I have one more show, and if you want to email me to get involved to perform, my email is kev@thetanknyc.org, KEV as in Victor @thetanknyc.org. And one more time, the Venmo information for the artists on tonight's show are in the information box below the video. And if you want to donate to The Tank, help them raise money for their year-end fundraising campaign, go to fillthetank.org. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm Kev Berry again. Good night.